Let's talk man to man. I don't know you. I don't know what you've been through or what you're going through, but I know you'll have had people wrong you and situations that have made you want to get back at people. So have I, but I would bet Thorfinn has been through far worse than either of us, and he shows us both the wrong and right ways to go about moving on, resulting in a scene that taught me how to live beautifully, that showed me how when you believe you have no enemies, you won't, and above all, that showed me how to stop being your own enemy. This is perhaps the greatest scene in all of fiction, but it doesn't start in episode 21. It starts in episode 9. It's this scene here which is crucial to understanding I have no enemies. As a familiar face greets Thorfinn above a horrific pit of warriors fighting, Askeladd tells him, "This is the place where everyone is your enemy, and you live here." Without even realizing it, your first thought when you see people or something online is probably something negative. I mean, how many people do you internally roll your eyes at as you walk past? Think something negative about them without them even saying a word to you? How often do you resent people for things they've done to you or things they're doing just out of jealousy? And above all, how often do you have negative thoughts about yourself? I'd bet the answer to all of the above was often, more often than you'd like. So how do you escape this place? How do you stop being your own enemy? It's simpler than you'd expect. You stop seeing other people as your enemy. As I mentioned in my other video, for whatever strange reason, it's so much easier to be kind to others than yourself. So start there, because what you'll find is that when you actively start seeing the good in other people, before you even realize it, you'll start seeing the good in yourself. There's lots of reasons for this, but above all, we are creatures of habit. Seeing the good in other people is a habit, and one that will carry over not just to how you see yourself, but how you see everything. It doesn't take long before you're automatically seeing the good in everything. To stop being your own enemy, stop making other people your enemy. Askeladd seems to understand this, because as Thorfinn monologues on about how he ended up above this pit saying, "I'm here because this, I've done this, I never grow," Askeladd, in his unique wisdom, almost tauntingly responds saying, me, open your eyes, something awful is below you." And as Thorfinn opens his eyes to all those people he unnecessarily made his enemy, grabbing at him, clawing him down into the hell below, although you don't realize it, as you sit there and watch this video, the same is happening to you. All those people you've made your enemy, often without even realizing you have, they're now dragging you down, because when you see the bad in other people, you can't escape seeing the negative in yourself. But I bet my house, you can't name one time where you've done something good or kind for people and felt bad about yourself afterwards. And it can be the smallest thing, a compliment, a small little gesture, just listening to them talk about something they want to. When you're kind to others, you start to be kind to yourself. Of course, it's not always that easy. As Thorfinn starts to climb, Askeladd says to him, "Climb. Leave them dangling on you and climb." Because the reality is, even as you begin this climb and become a better person, you're still going to get the odd person that really tries to drag you down, that says something that puts you in a mood, does something you don't like, and you're only human. So it's natural that sometimes something will happen to make you step off this path you're trying to walk down. This is something I'll come back to at the very end, but pay as little notice to them as possible and continue to climb onwards, because they are not your enemy. Of course, there are very rare situations where it won't be enough. Thorfinn fully accepts this, and back in season 1, Thor's even said that the dagger should be used to protect himself. He was aware that possibility can happen, but it's only to protect himself. There are certainly times to stand up for yourself, but that's all it is, standing up for yourself, not trying to get back at them or getting angry with them or anything like that. It simply doesn't accomplish anything. And that links in nicely to the next part, fight a real battle. This is more of a practical bit of advice, because what I've found is these regular annoyances feel a lot smaller when you have something big you're aiming for. When you've got something positive to work towards, a lot of these smaller annoyances won't even register in your brain. I first noticed this at university when I decided I'd had enough of the way I was living and started going to the gym. All of a sudden, all of these little things people would say or do that would normally annoy or upset me didn't matter in the slightest because I had my own personal, real battle to focus on. Not only will you have less enemies when you live this way, which is something I'll come back to, but none of those fights are worth winning anyway. As Thorfinn wakes up from his dream, he looks at Einar and says, "We won," but does this look like a man who's won? Battered and bloodied? He even admits he got nothing out of that but some temporary satisfaction. I don't know what your real battle is, but I promise you, it's not arguing with other people. It's not being filled with jealousy or anger, and it's certainly not seeking revenge. For Thorfinn, he realizes he spent his entire life filled with anger, seeing the whole world as his enemy. He finally decides enough is enough. These people aren't his enemies. He will never hurt anyone again, but instead help them. To atone for his past and save more people than he's hurt is his real battle. And with that, Thor's, now realizing his son fully understood what he meant on that day, turns and walks into the sunset, at last able to peacefully move on. We have so much we can do in one life. Do not waste your gift on hating others. No matter what they've done, your life is worth so much more than that. So Thorfinn, now understanding how valuable a life is, having come a long way from his scene at the start of the season where he claimed there was nothing good about living, finds himself at the end of episode 20, faced with a very difficult choice. Does he go back and try and stop the fighting, or does he leave with the belief that Canute is not his enemy, despite their past, and the realization that the path he wants to walk begins by helping others? Thorfinn makes his decision. As he confidently declares, even 100 men couldn't stop him returning alive, he walks back towards the battlefield. With no plan, no sword or malice, he walks towards the guards and asks to see the king, beginning the greatest scene in all of fiction. As he approaches, the guards mock, provoke, and eventually swing at Thorfinn. The thoughts reveal that they've been betting on how many punches he can withstand. The shock of this distracts Thorfinn long enough for a hit to land, but as he rises to his feet, he announces that he will bet on himself to withstand 100 punches. I don't know if this was intentional by the writer, but Thorfinn's old fighting style was a lot of dodging and outmaneuvering, but this is the complete opposite. This is a completely new Thorfinn. And with that, the punches begin and the crowd watches on as 31 hits land on the son of Thor's, who skillfully twists his body to minimize the impact. But right before the 32nd, Snake calls out to him, and this brief distraction leads to a heavy punch that sends him flying backwards. Snake runs over to check on him and says, "Exactly what I was thinking the first time I read this. If this were a matter that could be solved through simply talk alone, it would have been resolved long ago. You're being naive." To which Thorfinn responds, "Did anybody even try to put the effort in to talk it through? Or did you simply decide to fight when the other side drew their swords first?" I could not take my eyes off this panel for a while. Without even realizing it, you likely live this every single day. That person you walk around being so angry with, which might even be yourself. Have you actually tried to resolve things? Or do you just respond back the way they treat you, letting that resentment fester inside you? Okay, sure, they started it, but don't be the one to carry it on. Be the one to end it, because if you try to argue or fight back, it immediately puts people on the defensive. If you draw your sword, and most people do, the man opposite will do the same. He will become your enemy. But if you extend a handshake, he too will shake yours, and you will have no enemies. And this is what Thor's meant when he says no one has any enemies, because chances are they don't even see you as an enemy. Humans are incredibly complicated beings. There could be a million reasons why any degree of conflict between you and someone else started, but it's incredible how a single kind gesture can turn so many enemies into friends. Of course, it doesn't apply to all situations, and that's something I'll come back to, but the vast majority of fights can only be resolved without fighting. Because just for a moment, imagine that person you hate so much, they are so angry towards, and just think about them doing something really kind for you, helping you out. You can't stay angry at them, can you? But The vast majority of people don't have the strength to do this. For whatever reason, it's so much easier to stay angry and resentful than to try and fix things. Hence why Thor saw himself as weak because he needs a sword. So you need to be the one to do it. It has to be you to be that incredibly strong man. And once you do, before you know it, not only will you have no enemies, but you'll be kinder to yourself than ever before. And so as Thorfinn rises once more to his feet, the punches continue to rain down on him, with the audience in awe. After the 100th punch is thrown, there's something very poetic about the one doing the punching is the one out of breath on the floor, because all that anger on these pointless fights takes so much more out of you than you realize. The only one standing is the one who fought his real battle, a true warrior. The commander of the Royal Guard then asks Thorfinn, "Why didn't you fight back?" And the response will be remembered by you and I for as long as we are blessed to live. I meet you men for the first time today. I know nothing about you, nor do I bear any grudges. You are not my enemies. I have no enemies at all. And neither do you, my friend. Of course, this situation is just a tad extreme for real life. Realistically, you're not going to get into situations where being hit 100 times is going to solve anything, but the message is completely applicable. Thorfinn had a literal army of people who saw him as an enemy, but because he didn't make them theirs, because he didn't draw his sword in return, after just one act, he had no enemies. As I said at the start of the video, if they're just one friendly act away from turning from enemy to friend, they were never your enemy. But what after that? What if I tried that peaceful option? I've tried being kind to them and things still don't work. Here's the thing, can you honestly say you have? I'm not suggesting you simply become a pushover at all. I lived that way for a lot of my life, and yeah, there are times where you do need to stand up for yourself, and you should be ready for that. But it shouldn't be your first choice to react negatively in any sort of way, but rather your last. It takes the smallest thing to dissolve the hostility between two people. It takes the smallest change in attitude to change how you see the world and yourself. It takes a single act to have no enemies. Thank you so much for watching, bro. If you haven't already, watch my first Vinland Saga video. I've got another in the pipeline coming out soon, and a shout out to our first Patreons, Northstar UK, Alex Ramos, and Vanj Argowell. If you enjoy this and want to continue supporting this content, or just join the Patreon Minecraft server, there's a link down below for you. Other than that, have a great day, and I'll see you for the next one.